2020 that fights back, and one of my guilty pleasures has to be D&D horror stories. Now, they're not great, it's not good that they happen, but by God, are they amazing to read. So without further ado, I'd like to share a couple of some of my favourite horror stories that I've read in a while. This horror story comes from the subreddit D&D Horror Stories, with the user limpswordfish02622. You used to have a husband. My wife and I are getting a divorce. I don't want a divorce. I desperately want to try and work things out, but it's not just up to me. I'm in a bad place right now. She can tell, so she encouraged me to continue going to D&D because she knows how much it means to me. I was reassured that we're all friends and that no one is taking sides. 3 days after she broke the news to me, her best friend shelved her old character that she'd been playing for years to introduce a new one. The character introduced himself, her first time role-playing a male character, to the campaign by taunting my former wife's character with the words, "You used to have a husband." For context, my former wife's character had a fiancé who died in combat shortly before the campaign began. I blinked. I turned to look at my former wife. In character, I asked when hers had a husband. Fiancé, husband, same thing, her friend said. I started to explain that they're related, but not the same thing. She said she just misspoke. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I left the room to cry in the hallway. I tried to be as quiet as I could, but I let some sobs escape. They continued to play without me until they needed me to roll for initiative. After the game, I told my wife that I don't think I'll be attending the next session. She says that's ridiculous. She said she talked to her friend after the game. She says her friend and the DM had been playing that character for months. The timing was purely coincidental, and she merely misspoke. I was a founding member of this campaign. I have played this character for years. So many hours, days spent. I don't think I can do it anymore. I feel like I'm losing my wife, my passion, everything. Okay, yeah, wow. I mean, that is truly a terrible position to be in. And to be honest, I think I'd react the same way. It's, you know, you could say we've been planning this for months, but even if they had been planning that character for months, you have to realize how insensitive that's going to come off and how that's going to affect this other player, right? There's no reason you had to start the introduction with that kind of dig, which that dig seems to be obviously aimed at OP, and there's no reason it even had to be a thing. You know? Honestly, if it was me, and what I'd say is, he needs to leave. He needs to leave, and honestly, the fact that his ex-wife is defending this kind of behavior, she must, you must know that it's more than that, right? I don't think that, probably for the best. You need to leave and maybe take a little break from D&D before jumping into your next campaign, just to clear this terrible taste out of your mouth. Our next story comes from the same subreddit, D&D Horror Stories, and comes from the user Demorph. My no-goes were not only laughed off, but taken advantage of. So I was playing in a campaign that only took place once a month online. I was having fun role-playing, everybody seemed chill and genuinely fun to be around. No red flags, which is why, when out of the blue after a session, the topic of no-goes and horror stories came up. I felt like it was not a big deal to throw mine out there. I would not, under any circumstances, like my character to have sexual encounters. Much to my surprise, people started laughing. Instead of the, well, that's not going to happen in this campaign anyway, I was expecting, I was bombarded with reasons why this was a dumb thing to say. People have sex though. You can always fade to black. Why would that be a no-go for you? Are you asexual or something? And no, I am not. This is just not what I'm playing TTRPGs for. I would not even be extremely uncomfortable to roleplay up until the scene before fading to black. It's just not what I want to get out of the game. Anyway, while this did not feel great, I did not feel super discouraged at first. However, when the very next session had my character's childhood friend trying to go down on him, I did feel uncomfortable. I made sure everybody knew that whatever the joke was, I was not getting or liking it, and left the session. After how people reacted to that, I left the campaign for good. Not a major horror story, I know, but it did leave a sour taste in my mouth. Edit, read through the comments and damn, apparently me saying this was not a major horror story was actually downplaying the situation quite a bit. Thanks guys, feels good to know that I'm not alone in this. I mean, wow, that is... Laughing at somebody's boundaries and their no-goes is already just horrible, right? You should never do that. No matter what those boundaries are, you should always respect people's, what people are comfortable with, what people want to happen. It should never be something you ridicule them for, right? But to then, the very next session, purposely push those boundaries in a way will upset that player, will make that player uncomfortable, is completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. And like the edit says, this really was a very big horror story. I know the OP felt like at first felt like it wasn't a big deal, or wasn't as big a deal as some other stories are, but pushing someone's boundaries, especially with a topic like sexual encounters, that is a big deal, and it's not okay ever. Our next story comes from the same subreddit once again. The user Nekam and Michelle. DM went mask off. This literally just happened an hour ago. For background, it's hard for me to commit to a time when most games are run, so play-by-play is the way I usually am able to play. Someone advertises a play-by-play game in an interesting modern day setting. I reach out to the DM and he quickly gets a group together. All four of us like playing together, we have fun characters and we all do well together as a time. Fast forward to tonight, I make a self-deprecating joke about my own character. The DM then makes his own joke at her expense. I commented that I laughed, but I would rather he not make those jokes. Then he said he jokes, that's what he does. Racist jokes, woman jokes, Jew jokes, gay jokes, all the jokes. He hates everyone equally. We all try, uncomfortably laughing it off, until he starts going off on not being able to offend people anymore, and how he should be able to be proud to be white. Yep, all four players left real quickly. I mean, that one was Summit. Jesus Christ. It's making jokes are fine, right? But end of the day, people have jokes they want to hear and they have jokes they don't want to hear. And listen, comedians get away with making jokes that can offend some people because A, they are very good at what they do and they do it in a genuinely funny way, and B, when you see a comedian, you choose to go and listen to that comedian, watch that comedian. You don't have to go and see that comedian if there's things about the set you don't like. But end of the day, we are not comedians, right? You are not a comedian. You don't just get to say any joke in the world whenever you want. And especially when a player or a person, because this doesn't matter just for D&D, this is very important about D&D, but just for people as a whole, if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I don't like those kinds of jokes, then you don't have a right to be upset about that, right? This person just came to you very calmly, very nicely, and said, hey, I don't like those jokes. And all you have to do is not tell those jokes to that person, which is a very reasonable request. There's no reason you have to tell those jokes. And you know what? It's always people like this that are like, oh, you can't offend people anymore, this, that, and that, and that. It's like, well, funny jokes aren't supposed to offend people. They're supposed to be funny. Even the ones that comedians tell and the jokes that they make aren't supposed to be offensive, and they're not really offensive because they're jokes. They're supposed to be funny. They don't aim to offend people. They aim to make light, And it's always, I think it's always funny what he's saying here. He's like, oh, that's what I do. I joke, racist jokes, women jokes, Jew jokes, gay jokes. I think it's always wild how he's like, yeah, I make jokes about all these minorities. What about the people who aren't minorities? Why is that not in your list, right? Why don't you make straight jokes? Why don't you make jokes about men? You know, it's a weird thing. And then he comes out of nowhere. I should be able to be proud to be white. What's that got to do with jokes? What? What? Just an absolute insane ramble. And to be honest, thank God that the OP got out of there before it got any worse. Just terrible, truly. Okay, well, this is where I'm going to leave it off. Those were our 4 horror stories today. All 4 of them quite terrible, and I feel like they've all got things we can learn from. However, I feel like you probably don't have to learn from those stories because most people won't do the things that they were doing in that story. I do hope you all enjoyed. This is my first time kind of making this kind of video. I'd like to make more in the future. I'd like to make longer ones, but my first time trying this kind of style, this kind of thing. I hope you've all enjoyed, and I hope you all come and join me for another reading of horror stories next time. Okay, I hope everyone has a nice day, night, morning, wherever you are, whenever you are.